Thank you so much, Whitney and Shannon, for inviting me here. I really appreciate it. And first of all, happy Valentine's Day. I once heard an interview with Jerry Seinfeld. Everybody knows the comedian Jerry Seinfeld. And someone said to him, how do you maintain your confidence when you walk out on that stage? Because comedy crowds can be tough, right? They can be heckling. They can be like, okay, funny man, make me laugh. Or they can be drinking. There's a lot that can be happening. It's one of the toughest crowds I've heard from my comedy friends. And this interviewer said to him, how do you maintain your confidence? And he said, you know what? I just decide before I walk out onto that stage that I love these people. I just decide, I look around that room and I say, I love these people. And I've met some of you already today, and looking out at the audience, I think that you're pretty easy to love. So I'm really happy to be here with you again today. So we're going to talk about confidence boosters for 2025. And confidence, and the reason that I wrote my book, is a blend of calm and confidence, because it was the two things that all of my clients were looking for. Whether they were performing in front of the camera, public speaking, going on a job interview, they could be really great at what they do, really expert, but they might still get stress and anxiety or put a lot of pressure on themselves when the price is high. So they might have had the confidence, but not the calm. And then others may be more calm. They don't get too much anxiety. Communications and public speaking doesn't really rattle them, but they didn't feel really expert or confident at what they were doing, or they were dealing with things like the imposter syndrome, self-doubt, etc. That's one of the greatest gifts that I've received of all of these years of coaching and training people. Is it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, how successful you are. They could be celebrities, they could be CEOs of companies. Everybody has doubts and fears. We all have to deal with that at different times. So today I'm going to share some of the strategies from my book and things that I teach my clients and students, and things that I've learned from my clients and students, as well as being always a lifelong learner. A shoe company sent two salesmen to a remote island. And they said, we want you to find out what's the market here. Can we sell to these people on this remote island? And when they arrived, they walked around the island, they realized nobody here wears shoes. Everybody was barefoot, not a shoe in sight, not a sneaker in sight. So what happened was one of the salespeople said, you know what, I'm calling the company back. I'm going to tell them this is hopeless. Nobody here wears shoes. I'm just feeling completely dejected and, hopeless right now. I'm out of here. So there goes that salesperson. The other salesperson said, oh my God, nobody has shoes. We've struck gold. We're going to sell everybody on this island. Big difference, right? Different perspective, different shift. So who did you resonate with at first? Did you think to yourself, if I show up and nobody is here to look like they need my product, I'm just going to get out of here? Or do you see that opportunity like the second salesperson that felt like, oh my gosh, there isn't a shoe in sight. I am just going to kill it here. And what's the difference here? What do? It's that we interpret things that shape how we are going to either be persistent, stick to it, or have confidence. It's all in our perception. They were on the same island. They were the same people, but they had very, very different points of view. And so often our success comes from seeing opportunities that other people don't see. So, there's a lot of these islands in the world, right, where we feel like, okay, nobody's got shoes. And we're going to always have that choice of, do I turn back because I don't see opportunity here? Or am I going to look for opportunity that other people might not see? So obviously the island is an analogy for so many situations that we encounter. And what is really the key here? The key is our mindset. There's so much that we can't control in this world. We are bombarded with news and the economy and negative things and people that are pessimistic and people who are doubters and good days and bad days and a lot going on in our own personal lives that can throw us off when we have to then go to work and show up and be positive and enthusiastic. But the one thing as human beings that we have absolute 100% control over is our mind. That is our real estate. That inner world is our personal real estate that nobody else can influence unless we let them. So we have to get good at mastering that inner confidence, our inner world. I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes right now, and I want you to picture your kitchen, and I want you to think about where your butter knives are. And I want you in your mind's eye right now to help me get in your house, navigate into your home, navigate through your kitchen, go and find that drawer wherever the butter knives are, and successfully bring you back a butter knife. Now, I'm sure that right now, all of you did that fine. You could help me do that without writing me a note, without holding my hand. If I showed up at your house, I would find that butter knife. Do we all agree with that? Okay. So that's your mental screen. That's the mind's eye, okay? And that is where we are the director of that mental screen. And that is where so much happens. I like to tell people, look around the room and look at anything that's not from nature, whether it's us humans or, not the plants or the trees outside, but anything that's not from nature was once first an idea on someone's mental screen, in their mind's eye, before it became something tangible, before it became reality. That's pretty powerful. That mental screen is so powerful. But it's not just things and tangible items. It's whether you could, go to a career, become a doctor, have a family, picture where you want to live, imagine what your children might be someday, imagining a goal. It all has to start on that mental screen and that place where, again, we are the director of that screen. But the tough part is that we're really good at this, but sadly, we're good at imagining what could go wrong. We're picturing worst case scenario, thinking about, oh gosh, what if they don't like me? What if this doesn't happen? What if I fail? And I work with very, very academic, very intelligent people sometimes. And I find that the higher your intelligence, the more your survival skills kick in. And what are our survival skills? It's that CYA, cover my butt, protect myself, survive, think through these worst case scenarios. So that's our default. We're really good at that. 60,000 thoughts run through our mind every day, and a majority of them are negative because it's self-preservation. It's survival skills. But we have to know that studies show we cannot think a positive and a negative thought simultaneously. Science has proven this. So we have to say to ourselves, how am I going to control the one thing in this world that I can certainly control? And that is my mental screen. So think about what you're thinking, what you're saying to yourself, what you're visualizing as you go along. Because what we focus on expands. Have you ever noticed, like when you got a new car and you didn't really see them on the road, and then you get your new car and now you see 28 of those same car constantly wherever you go? Or I'm a big antique person. At one point I was collecting teapots. So I would go into antique stores and I would beeline right for what I was looking for, and I would find it. And then a while later I switched to something else, and then I went back and I was like, oh, how come I didn't see this the last time I was here? Because I wasn't focused on it. I wasn't looking for it. And we don't realize that if we focus on what is lack, what is limitation, what is wrong, that expands. We notice more of that. We attract more of that. But when we focus on what is right and what we want to have happen, rather than what we don't want to have happen. I work with a lot of people that go on television, a lot of guest experts. And before they're going to go on the Today Show, I will literally condition them to don't think about blanking out, don't think about sounding stupid, don't think about saying the wrong thing, because you're programming your subconscious. Think about, how do I want it to unfold? See yourself having a great interview. See people after the interview coming up to you and saying, oh my gosh, I caught you on the air and it was so great, I learned so much. That's what athletes do. It's called pre-paving. And what happens is we're conditioning our subconscious. And then when we get in a stressful situation or a high-stakes situation, we default to that primitive place, which is that subconscious. And if we've put garbage in, we get garbage out. If we put good stuff in, we get good stuff out. So you're constantly programming your subconscious, and other people are programming it too. People, what they say to you, what parents have said, what well-meaning family has said, what a bad coach or a teacher said way back in the day that we don't even know is locked back in there. So just know that we have the ability to rewire and reprogram some of those things that might not be so great. So it really comes down to having a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So, with a growth mindset, we're like, you know what? I'm always learning. Things will get better. Things will change. It's always evolving. With a fixed mindset, it's like, well, that's just how I am. Or that's how it's always been. Or I can't control that. That's a tough situation. There's too much competition. With a growth mindset, it's like competition, it's good. That means the pie is bigger. But with a fixed mindset, oh, that means the pie is smaller because there's more competition. It's really just that yin and yang. So I love this quote from J.G. Holland. And I'm a bird person. I love birds. My husband's been calling me that I'm becoming the crazy bird lady because I have a bunch of bird houses in my backyard now, but it just gives me pleasure. And this quote was, God gives all birds their food, but he doesn't throw it in their nests. And I heard Whitney refer to that right in her speech in the beginning. We've got to go out there and get it. I mean, just think about that for a second. The birds don't starve, but they've got to get out of their nest. Is it scary? Could they get eaten by a predator? Could they fall? Could the birds that are new not fly? Yes, all those things could happen. But if they stay in that nest, surely they're going to starve. Surely they're going to die. So, it's out there, but we have to just have that attitude of, yes, I'm going to be that bird that goes and gets it. And there's a lot of birds that come to my bird feeder, a lot of them. But I noticed one thing with the cardinals, and you'll see a female cardinal there. The male and female cardinals do something else that the other birds don't do. So they're there when, it's feeding time and when I've put the feed out. But that male cardinal in particular comes early before I've put the feed out. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I hear him or I see him and I'm taking care of my dogs and I go run to get the food and I'm like, oh, he's here. I don't want to disappoint that male cardinal because he came early. He showed up before the other birds. So now I want to make him happy. I want him to stick around because he's beautiful. He shows up. He makes a good presentation. He's wearing red for Valentine's Day. There's all this great stuff. But what also happens is now all these birds came. Everybody ate the food. And then I'm thinking, okay, that's it for the day until tomorrow. But then I started noticing around dusk, that male cardinal shows up again when nobody else shows up. And I'm like, what's going on here? Is this creepy? Is this a sign? Because cardinals can be a spiritual sign. I could go all day about, the signs of cardinals. So I started researching cardinals. Another reason that my husband is now calling me the crazy bird lady because I'm spending my free time trying to learn about cardinals. And I found that that's their trademark. They come before the other birds, and then at dusk, they show up for seconds or to just get back there again to see if anything was missed or if anything is left, and none of those other birds show up. So we can be the male cardinal. And I try to emulate this cardinal when it comes to my business and my life. And I want to show up not only as the person that goes the extra mile and has that plus factor, but that is, a bright light, that is showing up, feeling great, bringing my best. And when you put yourself out there like that, people want to meet you halfway. The ones that are on that frequency, that are your tribe, that are your people, that do the same thing, you somehow find each other and you end up on that same frequency. And we talked about those birds and a comfort zone. So without, getting out of your comfort zone, there is no growth. And I like to say they're called growing pains for a reason. They're not called growing tickles. So if we're growing, if we're becoming more than we thought we could be, or we're growing in another direction or learning something new, it's going to feel uncomfortable. My son is 6'5" now. He's 21. When he was little, he would get terrible pains in his feet and his ankles. And my husband's about 6'4" too. And we immediately said, he's going to be a tall one like you because we can see the growth happening. We could feel it. He'd be complaining about the growth pains. And now he's, really happy that he's such a big guy. But it was hard for a time when he was growing. But we need to know that that's what happens when that growth takes place. It is not growing tickles. It is absolutely growing pains. And in the broadcasting industry where I grew up and started my career, that was a saying. Everybody's like, you know what? Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's your job. Because you're going to be in some really stressful situations. You're going to be live on the air. There's going to be a lot coming at you. You're going to be in the spotlight, a lot of judgment these days on social media for poor people that are, in front of the camera still. And, it's like, just say to yourself, I'm going to get comfortable with this uncomfortable feeling because it's part of the territory of growth. So that brings us to persistent confidence. So how do we conquer procrastination? I was giving a workshop recently in Rockland County, New York, to a group of real estate professionals, and we went around the room and everybody would raise their hand. And one woman in particular said, I just sit there and I know that I need to do this. I know that I need to follow up. I know that I need to take action, but then I don't. And it's like she gets frozen and it's excruciating. And, we explored this a little bit, and she's not only afraid of no, but she's afraid of yes. Because if she hears no, that means that potential is no longer there. So if she doesn't do anything, that potential is always there. It's always like, oh, that possibility is there. But if I take action, that possibility, that potential could go away. So she's afraid of that. But then she's afraid if she hears yes, oh, I better know my stuff now. I better have all my ducks in a row. I better be able to produce and really be great at this before somebody else swoops in and gets something that, I'm working on. So think to yourself when you're putting something off, is the procrastination because you're afraid of that no, or is it because maybe you're afraid of yes? So it really comes down to keep going. I have a dear friend named Dr. Lisa Brooks Griot, and she wrote a great book called Don't Abdicate the Throne. It's about when women give away their power for different reasons. But she has this great saying that she would always say to me, if I pitched a client or I pitched a big company for a coaching and training or whatever project I was working on, and I didn't get it, she'd be like, some will, some won't, so what? And I was like, oh my God, that's so freeing. Like, it just let me be roll things off my back more that, you know what? Not everybody is going to say yes. It doesn't mean that what I'm offering is any less valuable or that I'm any less valuable as a person or with what my expertise is. It's just some will, some won't. And so what? So that talks about, this whole idea of prospecting. The more we send out there, the more we secure. Successful, famous people that I have dealt with still have the inner critic. But at some point, we can stop taking direction from it, and we can hand that internal microphone to our inner coach. And who's our inner coach? Our inner coach is that part of you that has built up a friend, encouraged someone, a younger person or somebody going through a hard time, and you're like, no, you're a great person. You can do this. You've earned the right to be here. Keep going. We've all done that to somebody that we care about in our lives, but how often do we really do that to ourselves? Usually we go back to that default where our self-talk is negative, we doubt, we, don't speak to ourselves very kindly. And someone once said, the most important thing we will ever hear is what we say to ourselves. Because we're constantly talking to ourselves. We're even talking to ourselves about what you think about me, or what he said to me, or what they are going to say soon. We're interpreting that in the way we talk to ourselves constantly. So I like to ask people, Simon Sinek, who is a motivational speaker and an author and many things, came up with this idea of what's your why? So why are you doing this? Why do you do what you do? And when I was speaking with that group that I mentioned, I said to them, wow, I think that your work is it's such a privilege. It's such sacred work to help someone find a home. I know how important my home is to me and my family and so much of my life and what a big part of my life that is. And the fact that you get to be that solution, that you get to be that person that helps match that with someone. A lot of people when they're, prospecting or they're doing sales, and even myself when I've approached people when I first started doing this, and sometimes now, if I feel like I'm selling what my services are, or if I want them to hire me, that's a very different mindset than, you know what, I know I can help these people. I know that I can teach them something or bring them wisdom or help them find the answer themselves or, help them, tap into a skill that they didn't realize or a strength that they didn't realize. So show up like a solution. You are the solution and you're the resource for people. You're not selling them on anything if you really think about it, and that's your why. If that is your why. If it's not your why, and it's just about the transaction and the money and the win, well, then you got to do some soul searching because that obviously can affect things. But if your why is, yeah, I want to be of service. I want to give great value. I want to help someone. Man, that's just great energy. You show up with that and not everybody does, you're ahead of the game. So I'll ask a lot of my clients, take a personal inventory. I've forced them to write down, what are all your wins in the last 5 years? What are complimentary letters or emails that somebody sent you? What are all the things that you can list on a card that you could laminate and stick in your pocket on a bad day if you want to say, yeah, that's me. And 9 out of 10 times they look down at that list and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is me. I forgot about all these things. I forgot so many things because it's so easy to edit and just remember the bad stuff, rather than the good stuff. So take that personal inventory and say to yourself, how have I earned the right to ask for this or to be at this table or to make this connection or build this relationship? So which brings me to communication confidence, which Whitney also talked about how important our communication, our external communication is. So first, I want to ask everybody, what color is this sheet of paper? Mm-hmm. What color are your tablecloths? What color is the snow out there? What do cows drink? They do. Someone called me out on this on a speech, and they're like, well, baby calves do. And I'm like, I'm not talking about baby calves. I'm talking about cows. But that's how quickly we make assumptions. We assume that people are thinking something. Malcolm Gladwell wrote this great book called Blink about how in just seconds, based on past experience, where we're from, how we grew up, how we feel about ourselves, what that internal story is going on, we make a whole lot of assumptions that aren't true. I had someone one time that wasn't getting back to me, and I really thought that I did something wrong and they weren't happy with something. So of course I didn't wait, and I reached out with an email like, everything was okay? Like, I thought that everything was good. Still doesn't get back to me. And now I'm like, oh my gosh. She comes back. She had gone on her honeymoon and I didn't know. And this whole time I thought it was me. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I write that email questioning if was everything okay? Because then it made me sound like not so confident. So now I wait. I'm like, you know what? If I'm making this stuff up anyway, I'm going to make it up for good. When I first started coaching and training, I had somebody sitting in the front row like where you are. And they were looking at me like they wanted to beat me up the entire time. And I'm like, oh man, they're going to ask for their money back. This is horrible. I tried to not look at them. It was really distracting. And I'm talking with everybody else. Who do you think comes running up to me at the break? And then she's like, oh my God, I'm learning so much. This is so great. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You look like you wanted to beat me up. And she's like, oh, I've been told I get this really intense look on my face when I'm really into something. So I call it pickle pusses and poker faces in the book. So now if I look at you and you're looking at me like that, I'm like, I'm amazing. She thinks I'm the best thing since sliced bread because we're making it up anyway. So why don't we make up these assumptions in our favor rather than against us based on what you're thinking and saying to yourself on the inside and visualizing on the inside. So all of our communications from that external world, that influences our communication skills, our interpersonal skills, our relationships, everything. It all starts from within. And when I first realized this, I got a rock that I really liked on my desk and I put it there and I got painted the word within on there so that I always remember that that's where everything stems from. Because if you don't got it settled in here, if you don't have that inner trust and that inner I am enough and I like myself, that is going to impact everything externally. So start thinking about, again, that self-talk. What are you visualizing? What are you saying to yourself about yourself and about the situation? And we've all got a bad vibe from somebody, right? You know this. You've met somebody and you're just like, just getting a really bad vibe. I don't know. I went to this sunglass place with my husband one time. We just got this really negative vibe from this guy. And I'm like, I think he's an axe murderer. Let's get out of here. I don't think I want to buy glasses from this guy. So we know that that's a thing. But the opposite is also a thing. We give off vibes all the time. We give off energy all the time. And we don't even realize it. It shows up in a room sometimes before we walk in. When I went for my body language training, they taught us. They were like, body language doesn't happen after you say something. What is the trajectory of, the communication? First, it starts with emotion, then the body language and the facial expression happens, then the words come. So that's why, if you see a bad actor on television and you're just like, oh, this person's a terrible actor, it's usually because they're acting and they got them backwards or they have them out of whatever, So there's these things that happen called micro-expressions that happen in just a split second. So if you get that uh-oh feeling like someone's not on board with something or somebody's like, I'm not, into this or whatever, you may have just seen a micro-expression because we can hide them really quickly. So ask powerful questions, communicate, say, how are you feeling with that? Are we on the same page? These are all things that should ask us to move forward with other communication skills. But we're going to talk about all of those things. So you should be looking at people's facial expressions, their body language, their energy, and we're going to talk about some tips for that. But there is something called emotional contagion. This is a proven phenomenon that your emotions are contagious. So if you show up in a bad mood, if you show up all stressed out and you haven't kind of chilled beforehand and really centered yourself, that can influence other people. It's like a ripple effect. And then they can start, you can change the whole vibe. When I do a series on toxic work environments, one bad apple can turn that whole office into a tizzy and be a negative. And, that's something we need to understand, that not only are we setting the tone on that, but then we have to be able to guard ourselves from that contagion, from other people as well. So if you want interactions to be upbeat and positive, that's what you need to bring when you show up. So communication skills are great, but studies also show that the best communicators are the best listeners. And when I first started my business, I thought I had to have all the answers. I thought I needed to do all the talking and say, okay, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to do it. And I was working so hard. And then when I went through my coaching and training certification, they were just like, no, they're going to tell you what they need. They're going to tell you what's most important to them first. Let them speak. There's golden nuggets in letting other people just speak. Just then you can ask some of the questions, then you could show up like that, but you've got to really give that breathing room there and let people have even more breathing room, and sometimes they'll just keep going and going and going. In television and in media, it's something called active listening. So if I'm on the other side and I'm interviewing somebody or they're interviewing where two of us are there, I don't know when the camera's going to be on me. So if they're just going on and on, I'm just sitting there like this. And the camera comes to me, I'm like, oh my God, what a horrible shot. So they teach us, be engaged the whole time, be fully present. So that camera comes to you, you're like, right? But what I also learned when I was hosting shows was that I was helping my guest. When they knew that my eyebrows were doing certain things and I was making eye contact and I was talking with them and I was fully engaged, I helped them feel more comfortable. I helped them communicate. Then I realized that was part of my job as a host, was to make them feel more comfortable, to let them know that I was fully present and there for them, and that I would jump in at any time if they suddenly were fledgling and they couldn't get the answer out. So when you give active listening to people, what's really the greatest gift that we can give anybody is our full attention, is our one-on-one, 100% I'm here with you, because we're craving it. We've got so many distractions. We're pulled in so many different directions. It's really sad. So that is the greatest gift that you can give people, is that full attention. And Whitney talked about that friction. Look, when we're putting ourselves out there and we're trying to communicate and we're trying to be, I call it the happy dog. I walk up to somebody, I watched a dog on a trail one time, and they went up to somebody and they were just like, no, I don't like dogs. That dog didn't care. They just kept moving. They're like, here's another person. Hi, I'm here. They didn't change, right? So we're going to have times when there's friction and there's difficult personalities, and we can't run from that. We want to go toward that the best that we can. And that's when we really need to listen, because usually when there's conflict or friction, somebody's hurting. Somebody's struggling with something. Somebody's upset. Somebody was burnt, or they feel guarded. They feel like they have to be in protection mode. There's something there that, is very vulnerable and very human. And many times, the most unconfident, nervous people can come across very arrogant. That's one thing when I go and speak to kids groups, I'm like, confident people are open and encouraging, and they build others up, and they have a nice thing to say about people. You find somebody that's cocky and arrogant, oh man, there's a whole haunted house going on in there. They're really trying to put up a front because they're hurting. Something isn't good and something isn't right. And that's part of building relationships, is to try to find, what is that? And to not avoid, everything just because it feels uncomfortable. And how can we help? How can we go back to, being of service there? It's not the challenge. It's how we respond to it. It's how we show up. We cannot control how other people act. We cannot control what other people do, but we can always choose, am I going to react to this emotionally and get upset? Or am I going to choose how I'm going to respond to this? Because now I'm back in the driver's seat. I get to choose how I'm going to respond and either stay calm, stay pleasant, stay professional. And that's, again, a choice that we make. Over-communicate, ask for feedback, just be as open as you can. When I coach people for press conferences or crisis communications, we're always like, if something went down or something bad is happening, you get it right out in front of it. I don't know if anybody remembers years ago, David Letterman was got caught cheating. They were gonna, ruin his life, ruin his career. He got right on national television live that night and said, I screwed up. I was a bastard. I hurt my wife. I'm so sorry. He got right out in front of it. And he was sincere. He was, being genuine. You have to be in that situation. But so often, we don't look at the white elephant in the room. We don't call out the elephant in the room. There's just so much that we do to not get out in front of things. So if there's something you're dreading or something you're worrying that someone's going to take the wrong way or they're not going to like it, that should be your first thing that you get out of the way. And then you're a lot less stressed. And now they're like, oh my gosh, this person's so open and transparent with me. I like them already because I know they're not going to just try to, make me think things that aren't true. So let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to give you some body language tips. I'm going to go a little bit rapid fire here because I could be here all day and do an entire day with you. So I always have to be a little bit careful here. So Amy Cuddy did this great study where she showed that our body language can change our physiology in just 2 minutes. So when we're doing open body language that you see at the top row there, that makes our testosterone go up, which is our confidence hormone that both men and women have, and it lowers our cortisol level, which is our stress hormone or anxiety hormone. But when we implode, when we minimize ourselves, when we use less space, and what are we doing when we're on our phone or when we're like in the digital world? We're actually making our body implode to a place that's not good. Then our cortisol shoots up and our testosterone lowers. So if you want to walk in with great presence and energy, stretch out. I remember years ago, Johnny Carson he would do these things behind the stage where he'd do the Superman pose, he'd jump around, he'd do all these things to use his face and feel big before he came out to that crowd through that curtain. And there's something called the belly button rule. When we're in sync with people, our belly buttons are lining up. Everything is going towards you. In the industry, we call it navel intelligence. I know it's cheesy, but everything is pointing in the same direction. So if I want to be with you and we're really in sync, our eyes are lined up, our belly button's lined up, our feet are lined up. My feet are going toward the door. I want out. I'm thinking about, I got to go pick up milk. I want to get out of here. It may not even be against you, but I'm out of here. Wrap it up. So a lot of information happens from the waist down. So we have to think about how can we encourage that belly button rule when we're talking with people. And then when we're in sync, we do something called mirroring, and we don't even know we are doing it. I could find a million shots like this on the internet where when people were really, in sync, were on the same frequency, really liked each other, this was happening. They were mirroring each other. And, we don't want to ever be manipulative, but we can start to kind of cultivate this when we want to build rapport with people and start mirroring. What you don't want to do is like they pick up a drink and you're completely copying them and now they're like, oh my God, they're copying everything that I do. So you have to be a little careful with it. It's subtle. So we tend to lean towards people and ideas that we like, and we tend to lean back from ones that we don't. So start to watch yourself and watch other people when it comes to that. And where the legs go and the feet go, that's where the body goes. So there's something called thigh cleansing. You'll see people do this. It's usually because they have sweaty palms, they're nervous, or they're stressed out. When we wrap around ankles around the bottom of the chair, like when I used to know that my son did something wrong, and I'd look and I'm like, he's holding onto that chair with his ankles for dear life. He's about to tell me something I'm not going to be happy about. I learned that the hard way. Again, we talked about feet pointing away and bouncing feet. People that are nervous need to get rid of their energy. It's kind of like, did the baby come yet? I'm waiting for the baby. I'm stressing out in the emergency room. So start to watch these different things when you're interacting with people. So here are some signs of stress that you could show if you're stressed out and you don't want to show this, or someone that could be a potential client. Fidgeting, swaying, preening, fixing themselves, shifting, that eye dart going around, self-touch. Many times we'll bite our lips, when we're stressing out. And then there's a saying in body language, when we don't like what we hear, our lips disappear. So if you see somebody go, they're not happy, or they may be trying to stop from saying something negative, and they're pursing their lips to prevent themselves from doing that. And then, of course, look at the difference between this woman. My goodness, what a difference a smile makes. Just studies show that unprepared people tend not to smile, and people that are nervous tend not to smile. So if we're not a smiler, I've had people say, well, I'm just not a smiler. I'm like, but then you need to understand what messages you're sending. People will assume that you're unprepared if you don't show up with a smile. People will assume that you're nervous. So we need to understand, even though that fixed mindset, well, I'm not a smiler, it's just not going to work. So there is something called the 2 to 5 second rule. Eye contact is huge. Make eye contact, make that connection. But there's something called the 2 to 5 second rule. If I'm looking at you and I'm like less than 2 seconds, you're like, okay, are they shifty? Are they shaky? Are they looking for somebody better in the room than me? But if I go longer than 5 seconds, it starts to get uncomfortable. Then it comes the stalker stare, right? And that's why we have 40 muscles in our face. Because guess what else you get to do when you're talking to somebody? Look at their eyebrows, look at their mouth, look at their, if they're not too Botoxed up, look at their facial expressions so that you can see, is that a genuine smile? Is that a grimace? These days, some actors are very hard to get that close-up emotion because they're a little too frozen. But we want to look at all of those things to make those connections. And you know what? Our voice is our communications tool. I always say, if a plumber showed up to your house and he had his toolbox or her toolbox, you would expect them to know everything in that toolbox, right? So our communication toolbox is our voice, our body language, how we show up, how we use all of those things. So start to watch some of that disempowering language. Get "I'm sorry," completely out of your professional, vocabulary if you can. Rather than say "I'm sorry, I'm late," "Hey, thanks so much for waiting for me." Always put it in the positive if you can. And if you need to interject, "I'm sorry for interrupting," you don't want to do that. Just say, "Hey, I'd love to add something," or I have an idea that I'd love to add. So it's all in the delivery, right? You can say "I love you" 3 different ways. I love you. I love you. I love you. Same words, completely different meaning, right? So I will ask you, what state of confidence do you launch into every day? Do you get up out of your bed with dread and with "Oh my God, I have a million emails, I have a million things to do"? Or do you lay there for a second, 30 seconds to a minute, and say, "Okay, let me take a deep breath. Let me pre-pave my day. Let me program my autopilot to how I want this day to unfold." And even if things go awry, even if there's a wrench thrown in it, you still handle it better because you've programmed that psychology a little bit better. And we talked about that calm and confidence is a powerful combination. And what it really comes down to is building that internal trust that you have in that inner world that you need. And isn't this what we all want, like our pilot on our plane to show up with, or my dog walker, or a coach, or someone that's teaching our children, or the guy or woman that's going to operate on us? We want to feel like there's this calm confidence where it's like, you know what? I've got this. I'm in good hands with myself, so therefore you're going to be in good hands with me. And studies show that our cognitive skills and our vocabulary decreases by 70%. So when you blank out, that's really happening. When you feel like you've lost your mind, it's probably because this is happening. So to get ourselves centered, really get ourselves into that place of calm and confidence before we walk into a situation is huge just for our cognitive skills and our language abilities, our communication skills. So it is in the exhale. When I've been going for the certification for the breathing, everybody's like, take a deep breath. And that's not bad advice, but it's in the exhale where you get the release. It's in that pushing that out. And we stop belly breathing after the age of 5, by the way. We're usually stuck in our chest or our throat or our sinuses, and we take these shallow breaths, which does not get a lot of oxygen to our brain. But when we expand that big belly and go really down, below our belly button and where that cummerbund is, that's our diaphragm. You fill that up, you get those full breaths, you think straighter, your heart rate goes down, you get your breathing in check, everything else can fall into place when it comes with stress and anxiety. And I don't know if John Wooden was one of the coaches in that first video, but this is just something that I always love, that he talked about getting the basics down. He had star athletes on his basketball team at UCLA, and he would still make them go through putting their socks on, tying their shoes correctly so they wouldn't get blisters, going through the basics over and over and over again. And he'd get pushback, and they'd be like, "I'm a star. I showed up here because I'm amazing at basketball." And he's like, "I don't care. The magic can only happen on the court when you don't even think about the basics anymore. They're so ingrained in you. That's when that magic happens where people look like they're doing superhuman things." I love that because that applies to so many different things. So one thing that I will recommend is if you want to trust yourself more, you need to know yourself more. So I know I'm going to get some moans or whatever, but if you put yourself on camera, you can log into a Zoom by yourself and record it by yourself. Nobody ever has to see it. You can go through role plays with someone on Zoom. You can take out a cell phone. You can take out a video camera. Go through some of these things that maybe you've been putting off or you may not even know about yourself. I have people that have very distracting habits and they're CEOs of companies and no one's wanted to give them bad feedback because everybody's tiptoeing around them. And they're like, oh, everybody's afraid to say that they're a terrible speaker or that they're not a good, or their hands are sweaty when they shake hands. The people are afraid. So they bring me in and then I'm the one that has to say, "You're a horrible speaker." I don't say that to people, but you know what I'm getting at. So you can know so much about yourself by just getting used to hearing yourself and watching yourself. And that's how you can grow and evolve and get better. But watch yourself with your inner coach, not your inner critic. So it really is about something bigger than we're doing here, right? We talked about this, that it is not just transactional. It is something that affects people's lives, their memories, their love, their families, their passions, so many things. You guys are so lucky. So to go back to, what is your why? And to be able to focus on building those relationships and being of service and, being that person that is there to help. Man, you're just going to show up so much better with such better energy. That's contagious to people when you show up like that and you're not showing up like you're asking for something. You're there to give. I mean, man, holy energy shift when you show up with that kind of energy, right? So I'm going to tell you one final story. So there was a girl named Joan, and she was really struggling in her business. Things were going bad. She was going into debt. Stuff was happening where she was just getting so depressed and so overwhelmed. So she went for a walk, and she sees this older man sitting on a bench. And she sits down next to him, and he starts saying, I can see that something's wrong. What's the matter? So she tells him all her worries and everything. And he looks at her and he goes, well, you know what? I'm going to help you. He goes, my name is Rockefeller, and I'm going to write you a $50,000 check today to help you. And all that I ask is that a year from now, you meet me back on this bench and you give me back the $50,000. I don't even want interest. And she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. She couldn't believe it. So she leaves, and then she gets this energy shift. She's no longer stressing out. She's no longer worrying. She's making phone calls. Things are starting to click. She shows up at the bank to ask for a loan. She hasn't even deposited the check yet. She's just feeling so good because she's feeling secure. She's got this whole energy shift. And now the business is doing so well. One day is building on another because it was like she turned this corner. She just had this different mindset all of a sudden. So a year later, she still never cashed the $50,000 check. So she goes rolling through the park. She finds the man. He's on the bench. And she goes up to him and she's like, thank you so much. I wanted to give this back to you. And with that, a nurse walks up and says, oh, I'm sorry, is this man bothering you? And she's like, no, he helped me so much. And she goes, oh, because sometimes he tells people he's Rockefeller and promises things that he can't come through on. And I just want to make sure he wasn't. And she just looked. So what changed? She never even had the money. What changed was what she believed was possible, and her energy and her positivity and all of those things. It was like Dorothy. She had the power all along. But that one shift made all the difference. I love that story, right? Well, thank you all so much. This is the book. If you're interested, follow me on social media. You were a wonderful audience. Very happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for your attention today, and have an awesome, wonderful 2025. Success-filled. Oh, well, thank you. You just made my entire month. Thank you so much. Thank you. That reminded me of something I didn't talk about, which is there is a lot of competition out there, right? But nobody has your fingerprint. This freaks me out. If you think about everyone in the entire world, nobody has the same fingerprint as us. So then all we have to do is touch this world in the way that only we can. Put our personal stamp from our point of view, from our background, from who we are, and that uniqueness. We don't have to worry about the competition because nobody can touch things the way that we can individually. Thank you. Well, it's kind of like that analogy of if we're watching someone else's garden grow and tend to their garden, we're taking our eyes of what we could be building, what we could be growing, and what our intentions and what our why is. So yeah, it's good to know what other people are doing, but we can't spend too much time over there. We gotta be here with what are our goals. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much.